What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 146. Stop me if you heard this before, but we got a couple playoff contenders that we're previewing tonight. I feel like we've been saying that every episode so far. I feel like that's a lot of the SEC. I think this year and what we saw a year ago, I think there's 9 or 10, possibly even more than that considers themselves playoff contenders. And that's exactly what we got here tonight. Again, previewing Ole Miss and South Carolina, two teams that were just on the outside looking in a year ago. They're looking to take that next step for their first ever college football playoff appearances. But I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and start the night down in Oxford, Mississippi. Lane Kiffin has brought unprecedented levels of success to this Ole Miss program. I was looking back on some of their past records just through their school history, and Lane's had three 10 or plus more win seasons three of the last 4 years. He's had 10, 11, and 10. I was looking before that, all the way back to 1970. They only had three prior to Kiffin's arrival, dating back to 1970. So 50-something years. It's,
When was the
it's
most
really
recent one? 2014, 2013, whenever Hugh was there? Is that the most recent? And I don't even know that he got 10. And he might have only got 9
Yeah, I believe he may have had one. I'd have to double check.
with a bowl
There was
game.
one in 2002, I think, or '03, and then the other one was all the way back to like 1972 or 71.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
I mean, it's dated way, way back. So, just an unbelievable job that Lane Kiffin's done down in Oxford. And let's just go ahead and fire up that band, shall we? Because we're the Lane train, it's rolling down in Oxford. Rams looking to take the next step, man. Lane train's rolling in Oxford. Transfers coming in left and right. Get another 10-win season. I've really been wanting to get your thoughts just on this Ole Miss roster as you look at it now. Obviously, a huge transfer portal class as typical with Lane Kiffin's program there in Oxford. A lot of pieces that they're replacing on the defensive side of the ball off of one of the nation's best defenses a year ago. Feel like a little bit of a disappointment because, I mean, we were talking about last year playoff or bust. Fell just outside of that. Felt like they left a little bit on the table in that Kentucky game, particularly that ultimately kept them out. But just give me your thoughts on the Ole Miss outlook here in 2025.
Going in, honestly, before I took a deep dive into them, I thought they were going to be back in same boat as last year in the sense of 10 wins probably. I mean, I knew they lost pieces. I didn't realize how many that they actually lost. I didn't realize he was overhauling, getting 30 guys in the transfer portal. 32 might be the exact number, but somewhere along the 30, 32 number. And offensively, quarterback, that's the first place anybody looks. If you got to go quarterback, it'll help the pieces around you if they're not quite ready. And I don't know that Austin Simmons is, quite ready. He's no Jackson Dart coming into the regular season, but he's definitely not. He got some chances last year, and he looked really good in the chances that he got. Believe he played some against Georgia last year and looked pretty good against one of the better teams in the SEC. So I think that their schedule in the first half really gives them the opportunity to let Austin Simmons settle in and find his footing and get a little more comfortable in the offense and running that and being QB1. So I think that bodes well for them because he's an athlete. We've seen him pitch for 2 years at at Ole Miss. Messed up his elbow, didn't play this past year baseball, just strictly football now. I think, really, really talented guy. Graduated high school 2 years early. So he's only 19 years old, still a young kid. as a junior. So it's that's pretty crazy. He had like a 4.5 something GPA or 5 something GPA coming out of high school. So the kid clearly he's really smart. So that's that's a bonus, and he understands the offense, knows the terminology, he's been there for a while. I don't think they're going to skip a beat on that part of it. Um, but his wide receiver room, we had a lot of guys last year, a lot of really good wide receivers last year, and this year they're pretty much all a new wide receiver core minus Caden Lee. Caden Lee was second in receptions last year with 57 and second in yards with 874. He had like 890 something all purpose yards. He carried the ball a little bit too. So outside of him, everybody else that's pretty much going to be playing in the two deep is all transfers. You got Deshaun Stribling from Oklahoma State, who led Oklahoma State with 822 receiving yards last year. You got Harrison Wallace coming from Penn State. He had a little over 700 yards last year in receiving. Then you got Traylon Ray coming in from West Virginia. You got Caleb Odom coming in from Alabama. He's a tight end, wide receiver type. He's probably going to play more wide receiver for them than strictly tight end. Really good recruit. Had a lot of upside in recruiting. Was the number one tight end in the 2023 class. Just never found the field at Alabama, so he decides to go over to Ole Miss. I think he's going to be a big help to them. Then you got Deuce Alexander coming over from Wake Forest. So they did lose a lot of production, but they're also the people they went out and got, they played. They have a lot of production. It's not like these guys really didn't play. I mean, you got majority of these guys outside of two of them that played a lot of football for the teams they were at in the past. So they're not going to be first time college football players. They've got some experience and some reps under their belt. So that's promising to have. Even when you're going in the transfer portal, you're going and you're getting guys that are proven talents. The place where you don't want to see a whole lot of transfers coming in the offensive line, they really didn't have that many. They only had two transfers come in. Delano Townsend at left guard, projected to be their starting left guard, came in from UAB. And then Patrick Kudus or Katas, I don't really know how to say his last name. I could be butchering it. He's coming in from Arkansas, played a little bit for Arkansas. Not a whole lot, played a little bit. So still an SEC type player, SEC caliber player. But outside that, you got both your tackles returning. You got Diego Pounds coming in, playing some left tackle. I believe he was a freshman last year, played a lot of football. You got Bryson Sanders playing center, and then you got Jaden Williams going to play right tackle. He got injured last year. He was a starter as a freshman, played last year, got injured in week 6 or 7. He started at left tackle last year, and he's moving to right tackle is what's presumed this year. He's a really, really good player, but coming off an injury. So your offensive line's got a little more camaraderie there, and then they're keeping a lot of the main pieces there. So that's really big to see, especially with a younger quarterback and a lot of new talent around them. And then you look at the running back room. Logan Diggs is coming back, returning off an injury last year. Then you got Damian Taylor, who was an 1,000-yard rusher at Troy last year. He's transferred over, probably going to get the rock a lot. Keelan Lacey coming in from Missouri, and then Dominique Thomas, Dominic Thomas, and then Trey Hall. Trey Hall last year was expected to run, be one of the staples of the running back, and he got injured. This year he injured his Achilles this year, so he's more than likely going to be out for this 2025 season. If he does come back, it'll be later in the year. I doubt he gets many carries then because the staple of backs will be set, or the number one horse will be set by that time if he ever does come back this year. But you're losing Parrish and Bentley from that running back room, so you're losing a lot of production from the running back room. But like I said, with the receiver room, the guys he went out and got, they played a lot of football. They're proven talent, so that's nice to see. At least the talent you're going and getting has proven themselves and has played a lot of football. They're not coming in like out of high school, stuff like that, not playing. So I think that he set himself up roster wise to be competitive. But man, when you got this many new faces, there's no telling how the team's going to gel. Which, granted, we said that about him last year too, because the last few years really, but last year he had a lot of guys coming out of the transfer portal. So you never know when stuff like that happens. It's because how are these guys going to gel together? But at least the talent that he did get has proven themselves and has played a lot of football.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting offensively. Like you said, I think the schedule sets up pretty nice for Austin Simmons to kind of get his feet wet a little bit. I really don't have too many concerns about him. I mean, just kind of what's been kind of heard out of Oxford over the offseason. I think they're really, really high on what he can do. And, we know what Lane Kiffin can do with quarterbacks. And there's a lot of those same questions about Jackson Dart when he first got the job, and obviously ended up having a great career, one of the best in Ole Miss history in his 3 years starting. So um, I think Austin Simmons, I think can follow that same kind of path and end up having a really good career there, and obviously really high on his talent. Um, but yeah, the receiver room is completely new outside of Caden Lee, as you said. But the big thing is they brought in guys that have been productive at the Power Five level. They're not going to the necessarily the Group of Five level as much. Like they went got proven Power Four, receivers, as you mentioned, from Oklahoma State, from West Virginia. Um, so that I think that'll be big. And regardless of if Jackson Dart was back or not, you were going to have to get chemistry. They were going to have to get chemistry with a new quarterback anyway. So um, they'll all kind of be working together to develop that. Um, I think ultimately the offense is going to be just fine. I mean, you never have too many concerns about a Lane Kiffin offense, but
Right.
I think the big key is just this defense and the quality of players that they're having to replace. And obviously, it's a very good transfer portal class. I don't feel like they have that star power that they had a year ago with the Walter Nolans, and you had a guy like Trey Amos in the secondary who ended up being a second round pick. Princely, Ellen, his little brother's there now, and think he's going to have a big impact this year. But I just don't feel like that transfer class didn't quite pop like last year's did, and even though I think it's going to be really solid, a lot of productive players on it, it's going to be hard to replace that high of level production that you got from a lot of those defensive players a year ago. The Jared Ivies and guys like that on the defensive line. I mean, you highlighted before we started recording, they're first in rushing defense, second in scoring defense. That's just there's going to be hardly no way they're going to be able to replicate that, and that's going to be the biggest challenge I think for them this season. But you highlighted with the schedule as well, it does set up pretty nicely for them to get their feet under them, kind of figure out some things personnel wise, getting guys in the right position and saying, hey, who can really contribute for us? Who can we really count on? Because obviously, when you have this many transfers, um, even though a lot of them have played it at the Power Five level, um, you just never know how it's going to all come together when you take this many at one time. So it'll be key early to see kind of how they gel before they get into a kind of a loaded back half of the schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah. Continuing on the defense, really, their returners come in the front seven. TJ Daugherty helped lead, like you were talking about, one of the best defenses Ole Miss has ever had in the linebacker. He was second on the team last year in tackles. It was 76. That's impressive. He's a headhunter. You got Jamarius Brown, he was a Football Writers Association All-American, freshman All-American last year. Xavier Harris come back at defensive tackle. Centurion Perkins is honorable mention All-American last year at linebacker and defensive end both. And you got Tyler Banks returning. But then outside of that, man, it's pretty much a overhaul in the defense, like you alluded to. I'm going to name off all the transfers coming in on the defense and in the two deep. You got Sean Womack, played at LSU, played a lot of football for LSU. You just talked about him. Prince William Mielen played at Nebraska. Really, really dominant player coming in right after his brother. Princely, I know all of you guys remember him. So Prince Will's coming in. Ricky Fletcher coming from South Alabama was a starter in 2023 at South Alabama, but was injured last year. Jaden Yates came from Marshall, led the Sun Belt in tackles last year with 120 tackles. So he's a headhunter as well. Wyatt Williams coming in from Louisiana Monroe. Sage Ryan played all 4 years for LSU. Played in 4 games as a true freshman, but from his redshirt freshman on, pretty much played in every single game that LSU played. So he's played a lot of football. Jalen Braxton from Arkansas was a 2023 freshman All-American, was injured last year, played in 2 games, but then got injured. Antonio Kite, he's a former Alabama and Auburn player, so now he's at Ole Miss. And me and Cameron were talking about. Cam said, "Watch out, it's going to be at State next year, hitting all the all the rivals in those two rivalries." And then you got Kapina Gushikin. I could be butchering that name, and he's from Washington State, plays the nickel position. So again, like I said, with the offensive additions on defense, there's way more additions on the defensive side of the ball. But everybody that he's got in from the defensive side of the ball has played a lot of football. Wherever they were at, they played pretty much every game. They were starters. So these guys are also proven talents. But again, it's not like as big of a splash as it was, no Walter Nolan from last year. So it's not as big of a splash. Definitely more players, but again, everybody that he's got has played some football at a high level and has proven themselves to be really, really good football players. So that the defense is more my concern because, like you said, you're really not ever concerned with a Lane Kiffin offense. They're going to find ways to move the ball and score touchdowns. So the defense is where I'm more worried about, just in the sense of you're getting that. I mean, that I named off 9 transfer guys that's coming in, and they're playing the defensive back and linebacker positions. Majority of them. There's a few. There's one defensive end, but majority of them are linebackers and defensive backs. So if those guys aren't gelling well and those guys can't wrap their head around the new defense that they're going to be running, it could be trouble there. But again, they're really, really proven players. So that's a plus for Lane Kiffin. And what Lane Kiffin has done really well out of the transfer portal since he's been at Ole Miss, the self-entitled transfer portal king. So he's going out and he's got guys that really fit his system. He's not really paying these guys out the rear end. I mean, they're definitely getting paid, and they've done well on that. But he's not. They're not competing with Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma's in the sense of how they can pay players. But he has gone out and he has picked the guys that he feels like fits his identity and his team, and that fits what he needs. So I feel like he's done a really good job of that. He's proven at that. So he's comfortable in making those decisions. So I don't think the defense is going to take too much of a step back, but they're definitely not going to be the number 1 rushing defense and the number 2 scoring defense in college football again. I don't think. Right now, sitting here July 16th, I don't think that that's going to be the case. They could prove me wrong. I do think that they're still going to be good, but the biggest concern for me is that 3-week stretch where you go to Georgia, to Oklahoma, and then you host South Carolina. I don't believe there's a bye week in there at all. No, those are 3 back-to-back games, 2 of them being on the road. So, and Oklahoma and Georgia are those that are on the road. I think those will make or break their season because, honestly, I think they're going to get their get back against Kentucky this year. They do have to travel to Kentucky, but I think they're going to be ready. I don't think that they're going to be as bad as they were last year against that team. And then you got Florida, the next to last game on the schedule. That's also a toss-up, in my opinion. I think Florida's going to be a lot better this year. I'd probably right now give Florida the edge on that one, but I'm not exactly 100% sure which way I'd lean. Realistically, with all the, again, we know that all these guys are proven talents, but it's different coming in and playing with guys you've never played with before. Realistically, I think that Ole Miss is probably going to go 8-4. I'd say the ceiling is 9-3. I don't think they're going to be worse than 8-4. I really don't. But I find it tough to think that they're going to win every game between LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Florida. I mean, that's 5 games right there. They could win 2 out of those 5. If they win 3 out of those 5, they're setting themselves up to be played in the postseason. Just realistically, I really don't see that happening. They did manhandle Georgia last year. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But then they laid some eggs against some other teams, and that's been kind of on par for Ole Miss since Lane Kiffin's been there. They'll struggle in some games, they'll lose some games that they definitely should not lose. And so I think that we're probably prone to see a little bit more of that this year, just because of, like I said, it's no really just big time splash players, just a lot of players that have played a lot of football. So if I had to guess, if I'm putting money on it today, I'm saying Ole Miss probably goes 8-4.
Yeah, I mean that's right around their over unders 8.5. I think that number is. I think you can make a case either way, 8 or 9 wins. I think they're right in there. I've kind of got them at 8-4 area as well. You could definitely convince me into 9-3. I think a pretty workable schedule, honestly, comparative to a lot of SEC schedules out there. Um, if they could somehow find their way starting out 5-0, that would be just tremendous. Um, Getting out of the gate, setting them up for that really tough October stretch an early November stretch that you highlighted. Um, Going at Kentucky week 2. Um, yeah, I would think they bounce back in that game. You get Arkansas at home. Got a lot of big home games on the schedule. You got
Right.
LSU, South Carolina, and Florida coming into Vaught Hemingway. So if you can take care of business in the majority of those, you're setting yourself up to get 9 or 10 wins maybe. So
And
yeah,
their out
pretty
of conference
workable
is really
schedule.
manageable. Their toughest out of conference is Tulane.
Yeah, you got Tulane. You got Washington State's at home. Um, the couple SEC games in week 2 and week 3 that they'll have to be ready for. And like I said, the big thing about last year too was especially going into last season, it was like, man, Lane, they've gotten 9, 10 wins, but it's like they kind of get exposed against some of the better teams in the SEC, the Alabamas previously and Georgia and stuff, and then they beat Georgia last year, but it washed itself out because you lost to Kentucky, who you had no business losing to at home, considering your two rosters against each other.
And
So
honestly,
it
they shouldn't have
just
lost to Florida last year either.
no, they shouldn't. Um, but it was just one of those things where it's like, man, they finally had the roster to get over the hump and beat one of those top. I mean, the eventual SEC champion. But again, you took a step back early by losing to Kentucky at home in a game that, like I said, you just had no business losing that game and with where you were at. So yeah, they got to take care of business with the teams that they're supposed to beat on the schedule. There's several winnable SEC games that if they can take care of those, they can set themselves up with an opportunity to make a run at a playoff berth. And I think they'll be right there in contention. But like I said, I think 8-4. You could definitely convince me on 9-3 for sure. I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. Um, I mean, even 10-2, like you could honestly convince me. You could pick out 8 or 9 teams that legitimately could go 10-2. I mean, obviously they're all not going to, but I mean there are probably 8 or 9 teams at least that you could convince me if things go a certain way that could have the opportunity to win 10 games and be in the playoff. Like I think there's that many quality teams, but I think Ole Miss is definitely in that group. But obviously we know that there's only going to be a couple that get to that 10 win mark that ultimately give yourself the best chance of being in the playoff. And we had 3 9-3 teams last year. None of them got in. So it's like you don't really feel safe at 9. You really need to get to that 10 win plateau. There's obviously going to be a time when a 9 win SEC does get in, but I've got Ole Miss falling just a little bit short again of making to the playoff. Um, just with some of the question marks on the defensive side of the ball and having to replace so much high level production. But it's going to be a really entertaining team. I think Austin Simmons is going to be really good at quarterback. You've got some um, unproven guys at Ole Miss, but some guys that have played some high level football elsewhere. And if they can gel early, I think they will give themselves a chance to make a run at it there in October and early November. But I'm expecting another good season in Oxford and just kind of building on what Lane Kiffin's done there. As I said, 3 10 win or more seasons the last 4 years, unprecedented in Ole Miss history. A couple New Year's Six bowl games. Think they got a chance to do that again this year. And like I said, should be another good season in Oxford and a lot of big time home games to be fired up for.
Absolutely. And I know that especially in today's world, and I have been I have been victim to this as an Auburn fan in the past 1,000%. But if Lane goes 8-4 this year, it is not the end of the world. I would hope that Ole Miss fans don't think that either because of what they've been in the past before Lane Kiffin got there. You just alluded to they have 3 and 30 something years and 40 years, and now they've had or double digit wins, and now they've had 3 double digit win seasons and 5 seasons with Lane Kiffin. So even if he does go 8-4, it's not the end of the world. He's going to get them back on track. But I mean, realistically, I think again, like Cam alluded to, every team in the SEC is impossible for all of them to go 9 wins, 10 wins every year. It's literally impossible. So this might just be not a down year, but just a not as good as we've seen the last 2 or 3 years with Lane Kiffin, just because of the overhaul of talent that he's had to replace. So it's not the end of the world for you LSU or excuse me for you Ole Miss fans if this doesn't pan out to be another double digit win season. Very well could be, but realistically, probably just going to get 8 wins, maybe 9.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I said, I think obviously what he's done there, he's in a great position. The way he's got that program going, but like you said, I mean, 8-4 is still going to be a really if it's in that range there, still going to be a super solid season, and and we've already discussed too with the level that the SEC's at with expansion. Um, it's tough sledding. Like your 12 and O's and stuff is obviously not impossible, but it's just going to be so hard to reach those marks and some of those records that we've seen in the past. But no, I think they're going to have another solid season. They're going to be right there in the mix in the SEC. If things go their way, they got a chance to compete at the very top of it. But man, it is absolutely that top half of the SEC is just absolutely as much parity as we've ever seen, I think. And
Oh
like I
yeah,
said, you can make a case for upwards of 10 teams probably that have a realistic path that you could talk yourself into seeing. It's that competitive. So, but yeah, I'm expecting really another successful season in Oxford, and like I said, they're going to be another. They're going to be a really entertaining team again. I love watching Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, and I'm really excited to see what Austin Simmons is going to do. And I think the talent and the upside is really high with him.
absolutely. Now, cue the music.
How about those Gamecocks? We're going up to Columbia, South Carolina. Lenore Sellers, one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country. How you feeling about these Gamecocks?
End of the year last year on an absolute run. Started the year 3-3 and was looking kind of like, man, just another year of South Carolina football. And then they rattled off 6 in a row. Not worried about the bowl game, pish posh. They were wanting them and Ole Miss both were expecting to potentially get that 11th, 12th spot in the playoffs. Didn't quite pan out along with Alabama. Didn't pan out. Um, Going back and looking, in my opinion, I don't remember the exact parts of what happened, but they got robbed against against LSU last year. Had a pick six. They got called back on something. I can't remember the exact call of what it was, but they got absolutely robbed against LSU last year. Had a really good second half against Alabama and brought it back and almost won the game, lost by 2. And then they kind of get embarrassed and manhandled by Ole Miss last year. So it was just their losses were up and down, up and down. But they ended the year on a 6-game win streak and ended 9-3. Got one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. And then last year, in the second half of the LSU game, Lenore Sellers was out. He messed up his ankle, so he missed that whole second half of the LSU game. He was also nicked up in week 2 against, I believe it might have been Kentucky, but I could be wrong on that team. But anyways, in my opinion, we talked in the past a few weeks ago about how much we love Garrett Nussmeier, but I think personally, Lenore Sellers is the best quarterback in the SEC this year coming in. I mean, absolute dog. Got new OC this year. The Dow Loggins is gone, but Mike Shula is his new offensive coordinator, which essentially Mike Shula was his quarterback coach last year. He was on the sidelines because Loggins was calling plays from the booth. So Mike Shula was the one on the sidelines with him and talking with him in and out of series and stuff. So I don't think they're going to skip too much of a beat. I don't expect the offense to change a whole lot. It's going to kind of be like the Georgia situation where you lose Monken, but you keep his name slipping me right now. But the offense isn't going to be too much different. It's just a different guy making plays. There's going to be a little tweaks here and there, but Mike Shula, we remember him as at Alabama as the head coach, and didn't really go well for him there as the head man. But then you look at him in the NFL, and he was Cam Newton's quarterback coach at Carolina. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to this position. So I don't expect Lenore Sellers to take a step back at all in any fashion. I expect him just to exceed expectations and take steps up just because of the quarterback coach that he's got in Mike Shula. But you look at their wide receiver room, and they lost a lot of talent as well. You got Nick Harbor returning, which everybody knows if you play college football, he's like one of the fastest players in the game. It's a bit ridiculous. Can't hardly cover the dude. But he's expected to, be there, guys. His second year there, he really he really grew up last year in the second half of the season and really made strides in the second half of the season. So I expect him to be, their number one wide receiver. Then you got Mazeo Bennett, who's a sophomore. You got tight end Jordan Dingle coming in. He's expected to replace Josh Simon's production from last year. He was a really, really good player. Then you got freshman wide receivers that's getting a lot of hype on the South Carolina beat is Malik Clark and Brian Rowe. Those guys are expected to come in and make a pretty big impact as freshmen. And then you got another Sellers on the roster. You got Jaden Sellers. It's Lenoris's little brother's coming in playing wide receiver. He's a really good high school wide receiver. Don't know how much time he's going to see, playing time he's going to see this year, maybe here and there, but he is going to be there. And then Donovan Murph's another freshman wide receiver coming in. And then you got Vendravius Jacobs coming in. He's a redshirt sophomore. And then Lex Cyrus is another freshman. So the wide receiver room's pretty unproven. But with a talent like you got and Lenore Sellers at quarterback, who's able to run the ball with the best of them, I don't think you're going to have to lean too much on the wide receiver room. Especially earlier in their schedule is fairly manageable. Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vandy, Missouri, Kentucky, that's their first 5 games. So it's not like a barn burner in the first 5 weeks. So it's going to allow your team to get used to each other, get time playing together and get more comfortable with each other. Excuse me. And then on the offensive line, just like Ole Miss, they returned both of their tackles. They got Josiah Thompson coming in, playing left tackle just like last year. Carson Henry on the right tackle spot. And then at right guard, you got Trevon Ball or Trovon Ball. I think it's Trevon. And then you got Nick Sharp also at the right guard spot, came in from Wake Forest. They're going to be battling it out. And then you got Boaz Stanley, who's at center, coming in from Troy, who played a lot of positions for Troy last year, but he's probably going to be their center this year, or Rodney Newsome coming over from Western Kentucky. And then you got Tree Bobbleade playing left guard. So some newer faces on the offensive line, but the main position, the tackle, the most important position on the offensive line, both your left and right tackle are both returning starters. So that's nice. And then your running back room, man, you got Rasul Faison. He's a Utah State transfer, but as of today, July 16th, he still has not been granted cleared from the NCAA to be able to play. At media days earlier this week, Beamer talked about they expect to hear a decision back from them, from the NCAA on him sometime this week. That they said they've been coordinating with him, and he thinks that he'll be able to get cleared and be able to play. So waiting to hear back about that. But if he does, that's a big get for them. Really, really good football player, really good running back there. Then you got Isaiah Augustov, Oscar Attaway, who's been there for a few years, pretty good. And then Jawarn Howell and Matthew Fuller. So no really proven commodity there at running back. Not in the scarlet and black anyway. So but having Lenore Sellers being able to run a little bit kind of takes a little bit of pressure off that run game, just from having to find, a staple back. He's probably going to be running back by committee there until someone takes that leg up. So I think offensively, there's a lot of question marks just because there's a lot of unknowns there. So it could be a step back as a whole, but I think certain positions are going to stay the course, and especially at quarterback and in the offensive line. I think they're going to be better than they were the last few years. They had some injuries a couple of years ago with Spencer Rattler, and that was arguably the worst offensive line South Carolina's seen in quite some time. But then they kind of figured it out last year. Like I said, we're able to go on a 6-win run at the end of the season. So I think that the vibes are high there. I think the expectations within the locker room are high, and I think that it's not like okay, nobody knows about us. Let's go prove it like it was last year. It's okay, kind of the bullseye's on us a little bit with some of these teams. Can we still exceed those expectations that we have for ourselves, even though we kind of got a bullseye on our back, especially with how they ended the season last year?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's a good way to build your roster when you got a guy like Lenore Sellers at quarterback, and then when you got an edge rusher like Dylan Stewart
Absolutely.
on the defensive side of the ball, who's one of the premier edge rushers in college football, just a true sophomore this year. Um, had a really impressive freshman season on a very good South Carolina D line last year.
You
Obviously,
look at that dude. He looks he's nothing like a freshman. Like looks like an NFL player at 18 years old.
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, he's an absolute stud. He's going to be in the NFL before too long here. Future first round pick coming off the edge, just absolutely uh, giving opposing offensive coordinators nightmares, seeing where he's lining up and adjusting your protection for him. So I'm expecting him to have a huge season. And I mean, these are two guys that got big time NIL offers to go other places. And for South Carolina to keep those guys in the fold is just absolutely huge. You got a guy like Jalen Kilgore in the back end, a guy you can build your defense around too. So those are a couple really good pieces on the defensive side for a defense that's got to replace a lot in the linebacking core, some guys up front as well. So um, definitely going to be some retooling of the defense, but Clayton White's back as defensive coordinator again, who's feel like steadily improved that roster and the production as they've got more talent on that side of the ball. Um, but yeah, a couple really good pieces to build around, but obviously they've got a lot to replace. Nick and Memori from a year ago, they had a couple really high draft picks, so um, but yeah, I'm expecting a good season out of him for sure. Offensively, the way Lenore Sellers came on at the end of the year, if he can take another step forward as a passer, um, that's going to be huge for the South Carolina football team and program. I think a pickup too that is not going to pay dividends this year, more than likely, assuming Lenore Sellers stays healthy. But getting a guy like Aaron Nolan, a five-star quarterback coming out of his recruiting class, is going to be a redshirt freshman this year, was at Ohio State, didn't get on the field early, ends up at South Carolina. Having a guy like that in the fold to kind of sit a year and learn from Lenore Sellers, learn the system, those are moves that really help a program like South Carolina, that may not get those guys all the time straight out of high school, but getting those guys out of the portal that are really high level talents, bringing them into your system, letting them learn it, and then having the potential to be contributors down the road. I think that's a big pickup for them. Like I said, you may not show much this year, but I think that's a move in the future that sets them up for success. Kind of like they did with Spencer Rattler, a guy that was a five-star coming out, kind of fell on some tough times, got benched, but you knew the talent was there. Um, and then it was about getting him in the right situation and molding him. So, like I said, not necessarily maybe a huge thing for the 2025 Gamecocks, but a move I think that'll pay dividends down the road. But I'm really excited to see what Sellers can do with another year under his belt as a starter. You highlight with the receiver room. They need guys like Nick Harbor to really step up and be, because there's a lot of unproven guys in this receiver room. So that to me is one of the biggest question marks on the entire roster. A guy like Mazio Bennett that's played football, they need guys like that to really step up. And they didn't get a ton of guys out of the portal because they believe in this young freshman class of receivers they brought in. I believe they brought in 4 or 5 four-star wide receivers, so they didn't really get anybody out of the portal for that room. So it kind of shows you the belief they have in some of those young guys. And it's taken a big gamble on some of those younger guys being ready to contribute early on. And probably a big reason they got those guys because there were catches to go around. So I'm excited to see kind of how they develop. But no, it's going to be a really, really fun team to watch. And I just kind of want to get your prediction and kind of looking at their schedule, what you think the outlook is for this 2025 Gamecocks team.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get into that, I do want to highlight another name on defense that's going to be a household name. Played a little bit last year, but really was last year was a next man up type guy. We all know Dylan Stewart, but Brian Thomas Jr. That dude is going to be a dog this year on the defensive end, probably playing opposite of Dylan Stewart. And then you got Gabriel Brownlow Dendy coming in from Texas A&M. He's a big time transfer coming in, and then at the linebacker core, Sean Murphy and then Justin Okoronkwo. Both of them played at Bama, and then Murphy was at Florida State last year. And then Fred Johnson's a younger guy that's expected to make some big plays and be a household name by the end of the year. Fred Johnson, remember that name, big time linebacker recruit, probably going to get a lot of playing time this year. And then there's a couple of pieces they plugged in. Brandon Cisse from North Carolina State, he's transferring in the defensive backfield. But outside of that, they're pretty much
very high on him as well.
Do what?
They're very high on him as well.
Yes,
there's been a lot of talk about him.
Absolutely. And then, but everybody else, outside, like you mentioned losing Imamori, that was a big time loss. But, you got Jalen Kilgore coming back. He started as a freshman. He might play nickel and safety both. They're probably going to switch around some of the guys in the defensive backfield early on in the season to find what fits best. There's probably guys playing a couple of different positions. Brendan Cisse might play some DB or cornerback, but he also might move over to safety at times. You got Judge Collier, DQ Smith, and Peyton Williams is returning. So a lot of guys that like he said, they didn't go out to the portal and they kept their homegrown talent. So that's huge, especially on the defense side of the football. But looking at their schedule, they have a kind of unique schedule when it comes to the SEC because they play all 8 SEC games in a row. They don't have a couple of guys are playing 1 or 2 early, then they'll have some out of conference games, and then they'll play the rest of them 4 or 5 later. So this South Carolina schedule, they start week 3 playing Vandy, and then their last SEC game comes in week 10 playing against Texas A&M. So they go Vandy, Missouri, Kentucky, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and then they're done with their in-conference schedule. So that's pretty brutal. Not having a breather once the SEC play starts. That's very rare compared to all the other SEC team schedules this year. But opening up with Virginia Tech, that's going to be fun. I probably give the lean to South Carolina there. I just think there's better players on the roster from their standpoint. And South Carolina State, yeah, we're going to give that to South Carolina. And then Vandy, we really aren't sure how Vandy's going to be this year. I haven't really dove too much into them, but I know I mentioned it last week. Pavia is really, really high on them. But again, what player's not going to be high? You got to go to Missouri, who's been really good the last few years. You got to go to LSU, to Ole Miss, and to Texas A&M. I think you're probably winning 2 out of those 4 on the road. And then you got LSU, Oklahoma, and Alabama back to back to back. That's a brutal stretch right there. Oklahoma's expected to be much, much better this year. Realistically, and then you end the year, everybody knows with Clemson, they're like we've talked about them a couple of times in this podcast. Their defense, especially the front, is going to be dominant. It's 11 a.m. kickoff. That's nice. I love waking up early first game and seeing a really good matchup. That's going to be fun on rivalry weekend, seeing that matchup early on in the day. I think they're losing to Clemson. I'm giving Texas A&M the nod. I'm giving Alabama the nod. At LSU, probably giving them the nod as well. And then Oklahoma and Missouri are the 2 toss-ups, and I think they split those. So that's 5 losses right there off the top of my head. I really don't think that they're going to have 5 losses, though. I think the ball is going to bounce their way some way in one of these games. Again, with them, I think they have one of the tougher schedules, not the toughest in the SEC, but they have one of the tougher ones in the SEC, in my opinion, just with how they're playing all 8 back-to-back. I think they go 8-4 as well. I think that they're along the lines of this Ole Miss team that we just covered. I think that they probably go 8-4. Only have 4 road games. That's nice. Some teams have 4, some teams have 5, depending on where their out-of-conference games are. I think their ceiling, like Cam said, you could probably convince me a 10-2, but I'd shake your hand and say, okay, I hear you, but I'm not putting my money where your mouth is. I think their ceiling is 9-3. Realistically, I really do. That's the ball bouncing their way in a couple of these bigger games like LSU, Missouri, Alabama, and Texas A&M. I think that, but the ball's got to bounce their way a couple times to go 9-3. As much as I like Lenora Sellers and as much as I love Shane Beamer, I think that this team's probably an 8-4 football team. Which, granted, I don't remember what we said they were going to be last year. I'll have to go back and look at the tape, but I don't think that we had them winning 9 games last year. I didn't. I don't believe, if I can remember rightly, I don't think I had them winning 9. So I'm wrong all the time. I don't like to admit it, but I'm wrong all the time. They very well could go 9 wins, 10 wins, but realistically, looking at the schedule, looking at their roster and what the younger pieces that's unproven that they've got, I just think 8-4 is probably a comfortable win total for them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, Vegas agrees with you as well. FanDuel's got the over under at 7.5. So right there, that 7-8 win mark. I think with this schedule, that's about right. And to be honest with you, you can make a legitimate case. This team could go 7-5 and
100%.
legitimately be a top 15 team or
Yep.
top 20 team. Like there is a world where that happens. Like an 8-4 season for South Carolina, that doesn't mean they're not a good football team. Like they absolutely are going to be a good football team. I don't doubt that a bit. But it's the schedule. You got the Alabamas, the at Ole Miss, the at A&M. You got Clemson. You got at LSU. At Missouri's not going to be easy. I mean, Oklahoma at home. You open the season with Virginia Tech, who's supposed to have a pretty solid team this year.
Atlanta in the
Which
dome.
against the team his father built. I mean,
Yeah.
he built that program. So I mean that is kind of a intriguing storyline. You know, you got Vandy, who's a solid team a year ago. So I mean, there's just not many easy gimmies on this schedule at all. You've got obviously several coin toss games, in my opinion, a couple that you probably will lose. But honestly, this is a team though. It's like I think they're going to lose a couple games more than likely, but it's a team. Number one, you don't want to see on your schedule, and number two, and you definitely don't want to go into Williams-Brice and play them. And number two, I think they are good enough, and they have a good enough quarterback. They could beat any team on their schedule, 100%. Now they're not going to beat them all, but you could absolutely say they could win any game on their schedule. Like they're good enough. There's not a team on there that you go, oh yeah, they're so far and away better that they couldn't beat them. So when you have that capability, they're going to have a shot in any game they play in. But like I said, I think I'm like you. I think probably 8-4. I say because I don't of those say 6 games that are kind of borderline for them, they're not going to lose them all. They're going to win several of those games. I think 8-4 is pretty realistic with this schedule. You could talk me into 7. You could talk me into 9. I think it's going to be razor thin margins any which way you go. But if I got to put a number on it, I think I'm going to side with you around 8-4. But this is going to be a really good football team. Like I don't want that to be an indictment on what I think or what we think about this South Carolina team. I think they're a top 15, top 20 team in the country. But that's just how competitive the SEC is here in 2025.
Absolutely. And honestly, you look at last year, like I just spoke about, second half of the year, they caught fire, rattled off 6 in a row. The year before that, 2023, they were 5-7, but they won 3 of their last 4 games, and they played Clemson really tough. They only lost by 12, I believe it was. So Shane Beamer is notorious for getting better and better and better as the year goes on, which is what you want to see from your football team. You don't want to be top of your game week 3, week 4. You want to be top of your game week 9, 10, 11, 12. So with what he's done historically the last 3 or 4 years, they always get better. Even if they're not a great team, they get better, and they're a much better team by the end of the football season. So that very well could bode well for them in the last few weeks of their season. They get, both their off weeks come in conference. But if they could somehow catch fire and then beat Ole Miss, A&M, and then beat Coastal and Clemson, I mean that puts them at 9-3 based off what we've been saying, and that's a absolute historic win right there for this program. But what Shane Beamer has done is like you alluded to, he's not huge in the portal when he goes out and gets what he needs, but he's really big on the homegrown talent. So his program, he has built a legit program there. It's no more of he's overtaken a bad program anymore. This is his. He's built it from the ground up. They've gotten better and better each year. So it wouldn't shock me, if they had 9 or 10 wins at the end of the year. It shocked me a little bit if they had 10, but I wouldn't just be blown away like I was last year because of what he's done in the past. But I find it really, really hard to believe and buy into that they're going to get over that 8-win hump. A lot of SEC teams are going to be in that range this year. There's 16 teams, only 2 can go to Atlanta. Majority, more than likely, only 4 are going to make the playoffs each given year, maybe 5 here and there. But the Big Ten's good too. ACC's got some really good teams, so they're probably going to get 1 or 2 from the Pac-12, not the Pac-12, excuse me.
Big 12.
The Big 12. Lord have mercy. Yeah. They might get 1 or 2 from there, but realistically, there's probably only going to be 4 SEC teams year in and year out that's competing for a playoff spot or competing in the playoffs. Last year, there was a lot of teams up in the air for it that kind of got left out. We talked about Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina was one of them. So if you can handle your stuff, and not lose games you're not supposed to lose, then you'll be fine. But I just realistically, like Cam said, you could talk me into 9, 10 wins, and I could see where you're coming from. But from what I'm seeing and what I've looked into, especially with some of the other teams, 8-4 would be a fantastic year for the South Carolina team. And I know that's not what we like hearing. And I don't know what I've got Auburn going this year, but it's probably going to be around that mark. And I'm not going to like hearing saying, 8-4 is a great year, because I used to bitch and moan about Gus Malzahn going 8-4 and 8-5, losing the bowl game or whatever, and being like, God almighty, you can beat some of the top teams, but you can't consistently win. There's no excuse for that. But then look where Auburn is now. I'd kill to go 8-4. But it's just that what we've talked about so many times, that part of college football, that era of college football of teams getting 10, 11, 12 wins year in and year out is no more. Like, you're not going to get the damn SEC champion last year lost in the playoffs. And it wasn't even a good game. They played a horrible game last year, and they lost some bad games. They got beat by Ole Miss, and then they ended up winning Georgia. They ended up winning the conference championship last year. So it's a lot of up and down. There's so much parity now, especially with the NIL and the transfer portal. So the what used to be 9-3, 10-2 as, oh my God, what a year we had. It's going to be more like 8-4, 9-3. Oh my God, look at the year we had. The 8-4 is, in today's college football, is not what 8-4 used to be 10 years ago. It's not. It's not mediocre like it used to be, especially for the upper echelon programs. 8-4 is damn good. You've expanded the conference. Again, the parity is there. You got players at every single location you can think of. So I think 8-4 would be a great year for South Carolina, and I'd be ecstatic if I was a South Carolina fan going 8-4, especially historically what they've been the last 15, 20 years. I'm not. I hope that we don't sound like we're dogging on these two programs, because we both think they're going to have good years. Then we look up and we say 8-4. You know what I mean? So that's just the new era of college football. 8-4 is the new 9-3, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like you said, a perfect point. I mean, the SEC champion last year went 10-2 in the regular season. They went 11-3 overall. Yeah. Like, the SEC champion had 3 losses when the season was over with. So, I mean, it's crazy. So, like I said, you had Texas and Georgia in the SEC championship. Both had, Georgia had 2 losses. Did they had 2 in the regular season too, or they had 1?
Texas, I think only have 1, but they ended up having 3 because they lost to Georgia twice, and then they lost in the playoffs.
That's right, yeah. So they lost 1 in the regular season, they lost in the SEC title, and then obviously to Ohio State. So, yeah, I mean, both of your top 2 SEC teams had 3 losses. Well, obviously, one of them was playoff losses, but still, I mean, the point remains, like, at the end of the year, you're talking about some of the best teams in the country.
Got 2 regular season losses.
Yeah, so I think that's a thing. That's a new normal in our opinion, for sure. I did want to say one more comment about South Carolina and their roster. When you said his name, I had totally forgotten he had transferred there. Justin Okoronkwo, who came from
Yeah,
Alabama. I do think he's going to be a big contributor there because I do know this for a fact. Alabama really want to keep him, and I think Deontay Lawson getting injured and coming back for another year, that wasn't expected. They didn't
right.
expect Deontay Lawson to be back midway through last season.
Mhm.
Obviously, circumstances changed that. Justin Jefferson, they changed the junior college rule for an extra year. So those were two guys that they were not expecting halfway through last season, the beginning of last year, to be back. This was a guy that was going to come in and contribute, but with those two guys coming back, they couldn't really guarantee him the playing time that he probably deserved and was going to get. So that's a big get for South Carolina. That is one that happened early in the spring that kind of slipped my mind when you said that. I was like, dang, that's right. He went to South Carolina, so I think he's going to be a big contributor there, and he's going to have the opportunity too because they lost a couple of their top linebackers from a year ago. But that's a guy Alabama very much wanted to keep, but just didn't work out with those guys coming back. And he found a really nice landing spot there in South Carolina. But that is something I wanted to highlight from a roster standpoint. But yeah, like you said, I think you highlighted perfectly. Like the days of I mean, obviously the days of 11-1 aren't over, but I think for the most part, the days of 12-0 and running the table and just running through the SEC. It's just not something that's going to happen very, very often nowadays. It's just so competitive in this transfer portal, NIL world, expanded world of conferences and in college football. But just one thing I did want to highlight with these two squads, just looking at some of the schedules we looked at so far, how many great matchups we have.
Oh,
It is
dude.
unbelievable. I mean, it is week after week. I mean, I'm looking at South Carolina's schedule, and I'm seeing 8 games I am pumped about. Like I cannot. Same thing with Ole Miss's schedule and Texas's and Georgia's. It's just like the list goes on and on. I'm like, man, I can highlight 7 or 8 games that I'm just jacked about. Couple key non-conference games, and I just feel like in the past you haven't been able to say that to this level. Man, I'm so excited to see these games play out. Man, there's just so much parity in college football now. It's gonna be really exciting.
And speaking of schedules in the SEC, if if the SEC does not decide to go to 9 conference games, then we're going to lose some of these major rivalries every year. Alabama and Auburn are always going to play, no matter what the schedule goes to or whatever. Alabama and Auburn are always going to play. But there is a chance that if the SEC doesn't go to 9 conference games, that Auburn and Georgia will not play every year. And that is labeled the Deep South's oldest rivalry for a reason. They've played forever since like 1840 something. Every year they've played. So I honestly, it'd be beneficial for Auburn to not have to play Georgia every year, but I would hate to see that game go away and be an every other year or an every 3 year game. That is horrendous. And then Alabama and Tennessee would not play every year if it got to that. So there's a chance that if the conference game isn't bumped up to 9, that some of these games we're going to lose them. And then we talked about last year, I know that it might give a little more oomph to them when they do play every other year or whenever they finally do get back. But there's just something special about certain matchups. Third Saturday in October, there's something special about it. Deep South's oldest rivalry, there's something special about it, man. I would hate to see those rivalries go away. I want to get your thoughts because I understand what Sankey's doing. He's got the upper hand, and why would you pigeonhole yourself to give another team another loss throughout the year if you don't have to? But at the end of the day, the reason that you are as big of a program, or not program, but as big of a commodity as you are, is because of the fans. And in my opinion, I think sometimes some of these commissioners and some of the big wigs in any sport, really, not just college football, in any sport, that they kind of do stuff, obviously, for money grabs, and you want to set yourself up to play in the postseason because that's going to get you more money for your conference. But at the end of the day, the reason that you're so big and you have so much money is because of people like us and the people sitting in the stands and the people tuning in to games that are exciting and fun games to see. So I think that maybe they should, take the fans into consideration a little bit. I just want to get your thoughts on that of what happens if the teams or if the SEC goes to a 9-game schedule or doesn't go to a 9-game schedule and we start losing some of these major rivalries.
Yeah, I think, the big holdup right now is, um, the Big Ten commissioner, they're debating future college football playoff formats when, they potentially expand to 16 teams. There's a talks of maybe the SEC and the Big Ten getting 4 automatic qualifiers into the new playoff. And so there's a little bit of debate. Well, the Big Ten doesn't want to move off potentially 4 automatic qualifiers unless the SEC goes to 9 games. So there's kind of a hang up on that. I do think the SEC, if just say for example, if it remains at 8, I do think they're going to find a way to keep those big rivalries together. I do, even though like you said, there's a lot of money grabs right now. Everything's being driven from a financial perspective and aspect. I do think they are smart enough to realize that they can't lose some of those big time rivalries, the Auburn Georgias. You don't want to lose the Florida Tennessees, and maybe not some of like the biggest ones, but there's those. I don't even know if you call them secondary, but you don't want to lose the Alabama Tennessees, the Alabama LSU's. Like you want to preserve all those. I think they'll find a way to keep that. I do think they'll probably end up going to 9 games conference schedule. But I do understand from the SEC's perspective too, because they're like, well, we feel like our 8 game is just as tough or tougher than your 9 game because of the depth of the conference. And I really agree with that, honestly. But a lot of it is to do with potential automatic qualifiers and future playoffs, and a lot of debate and back and forth on that. But I think regardless of which way they go, I think they realize how important that is for the fans, and I think you want to keep that regional aspect of college football as well. That's really what's made it special over the years. Is you have those. It's went so national because you've got teams on the West Coast now in the Big Ten with a bunch of Midwest and East Coast teams. So it's more of a national feel now, but I think, especially in the SEC too, you want to keep that regional aspect. You want the Texas and the Texas A&Ms and the Arkansas and the Oklahomas and all that. You want all those teams playing each other because that's the way it's always been. Those regional rivalries, and the people in those areas get so invested in it because it's it's for bragging rights. It's for regional bragging rights, state bragging rights. So I do believe they realize how important that is, and I think they will do their best to keep those, and because you don't want to lose the Auburn Georgia rivalries, and like I said, some of the other ones I want to see, Texas and Texas A&M. Like we have to have those. I think it's so important for the SEC and college football as a whole. So definitely hope they work that out, but. I believe they should be deciding pretty soon whether the 8 or 9 game schedule before the season starts. That way, they can factor that into 2026 scheduling. So I'm really curious to see how that works out. But regardless, I want to see and I want to see the college football playoffs take strength of schedule into the right account, because you want teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, the ACC. You want them scheduling those big time out of conference games. I think that's where you really judge these conferences head to head against each other. And I just hope they take that to the right account where we won't lose. Like, we're expanding conference schedules, but we won't lose some of those big out of conference matchups as well.
Right. And I know it's much less teams than 64 like it is in men's basketball. But the men's basketball bracket, which, again, I understand it's a lot different because there's way more teams, but they do a great job of taking in strength of schedule. I mean, you remember last year in the ACC-SEC duel, SEC beat the ACC 14-2. And that went into consideration when they were ranking teams in the playoffs. or in the postseason in the bracket or whatever. So I definitely think that needs to go into it. We know my thoughts about expanding to 16. I think it's a bit ridiculous. I think 12 is perfect number. But I got another question for you that about fans, and it's not about the playoff or anything. It's just about fans. Okay, so I'm on when I'm on social media, I'm getting clips of stuff of other sports podcasts and of big name podcasts like the Raw Room. It's got former NFL players discussing stories and stuff like that, and then they'll talk about things throughout sports, college, mainly professional, but some college stuff, and they'll share stories, and then things will come up, and they've got guys on there they call non-athletes or whatever they call them, nons or whatever that didn't play professionally, didn't play in college or whatever it is, and other podcasts along these lines. But anyways, the fans, the guys that never played professionally or never played at the highest level of college, when they're talking about their team, they'll say we. Like I've done it before with Auburn for sure. I've said we. You've done it with Alabama. Tennessee fans do it. LSU fans. Everybody does it. Everybody says we. And the players and people that are in media, they get so butthurt when fans say we talking about their team. I've got to get your opinion because here's my opinion.
Yeah.
Like I just mentioned a bit ago, the only reason that Auburn is as big as it is, or Alabama, or any team in the SEC, the only reason that they're as big as they are is because of the fans. The only reason that any Division I team or any pro team or anything like that is as big as they are is because of the fans. If there was no fans in the stands, and there was nobody tuning in, there was nobody listening to podcasts and listening to the media and those players would not have the money that they have, and they wouldn't have the fame that they have and the recognition and all that stuff. It is because of the fans. I played Division III baseball, brother. There was at most 50 people in the stands, and there was 30 something of us on roster. So that's fans. That's parents, girlfriends, grandmothers. Like it is your family in there. So there's a much bigger difference in Division III and Division I, mainly being the fans that attend, because they're not, the money that's coming in to the Division Is and the professional levels is coming from the fans. The reason they're able to pay people so much, all the merch that they're selling, all the concession stands that they're selling, all the tickets that they're selling is coming from the fans. So the reason that they have the star power and the money and the fame and the recognition that they have is solely because of the fans. If there was no fans, they would be just like me in the Division III level. It would be your parents and your family out there and some girlfriends. So that drives me. I try not to say we a lot because, I get it. I am not part of the team. But without me and people like me and the millions of other people out there like me, these guys would just be playing like they were playing in park ball or they were playing in high school. It would just be your family and friends there. I'm not saying that I've got to get a championship ring, but then when the teams win the championship or they win big games, what do? They shout out the fans. This is for you guys. Thank you. Y'all helped pull us through. Got the crowd going really loud. And then they turn around and say, well, you can't say we. Well, we know we're not out there doing post or off-season workouts with you. We know we're not out there at practice with you. But damn it, you're who you are because of us. So it drives me nuts. I try not to say it all the time, but I do definitely say it. But when somebody corrects me on it, or I hear a media person say it, or a former player say it, it burns my ass, dude, because what are you talking about, man? Like the reason you're who you are is because of us. So I want to hear your opinion on that, on the we from fans.
Yeah, you hear it all the time for sure. I've definitely said it many a times, probably said it here recently, to be honest with you. I'm like, yeah, we got a game on August 30th. No, you're exactly right, though. The fans, the consumers drive everything. That's the whole reason anything exists. You could say the same thing about. Yeah, I was thinking while you were talking about this about like Walmart, for example. If Walmart doesn't have anybody to come in there and shop, Walmart's going to be closed up quick. If people are like, yeah, we're going to go to Target, we're not going to go to Walmart. Like, if nobody shows up, then guess what? They're going to be shutting their doors pretty quickly. Same thing with college football. Like, if people just stop going, stop watching, those media deals, they're going to dry up quick, and NIL is going to dry up quick. So that's why I always appreciate the people and the coaches and the players that really appreciate the fans, because Um, you know, you we invest a lot of time into this. It may not be dollars all the time. It's talking about it on this podcast. We're investing our time into this to talk about these teams, talk about college football as a whole. We invest our time watching it each Saturday, reading about it, keeping up with it. Like you what you invest your time in, what you invest your money in, shows what you really care about. And I think that just shows the level of passion that people have for college football, and especially down here in the South in the SEC. So yeah, I think as much as people pour into it, I think they should have the ability to say we if they want to, because at the end of the day, like it's everybody that makes the program up. It's not just the coaches, it's not just the players, but like I said, if nobody pours their money into it, if nobody watches it, all that work is for naught. Like, I mean, that's
100%.
just the truth. Like, it's always going to be there because there's always going to be a level of support to it for sure. So it's obviously it's not going anywhere because of the level of support that it has. But yeah, I think fans can say should be able to say that. I mean, obviously, we're not pouring into workouts and scouting or recruiting and game planning and all that stuff, but um, there are a lot of people that pour a lot of time into it and are super passionate about it. So yeah, I think fans should have that ability to say that if they
Yeah,
if they feel
100%.
that way. So
Because my dad
I
was at
don't
every
get.
game, and he always said we talking about Huntington or Hueytown baseball or whatever. He would say we all the time when we were having conversations, and it never once got made me upset or like, oh, you're not we, you're not part. Not one time because he's there. He's watching every single game. He's hearing about the stuff from me that's going on behind. Not like I'm gossiping to my dad or anything, but he's hearing stories that I'm telling. He's as much as he's not part of the team, he is part of the team because he's hearing things and he's witnessing things and he's at every single game and he's watching everything. So like he has every right to say we because he, his fandom was his happiness and that day about that game was based on if we won or lost, just like the team's happiness was. He felt the same way about it as we did. Yeah, he wasn't there at practice, he wasn't there at workouts, but he was there at every single game. He also paid for me to go to college. So he's got every right to say we. And so did my mom, or so did any other person, like any girlfriend that was sitting there. They can say we would be sitting around at parties or whatever and sitting around at dinner and they'd say we talking about us having a game like we got a game coming up. Who do we play this weekend? Stuff like that. And not one time did anybody ever get butt hurt saying, oh, you can't say we, you're not part of us. We understood what they meant and we understood that like you are as much part of this program as we are because you're investing, like you said, your time and you're coming to every game and you care deeply about it just like we do. So I just think it's a little ridiculous when they say you can't say we, stop saying we, kiss my ass is what I say.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I'll be honest with you, in this day and age, and this is, I mean, there are a lot of players that care about the program they're at and all like that. Obviously, they put a ton into it, but there probably are cases where there are a lot of fans that probably care more than some of the players do about a
100%.
particular program, especially
100%.
nowadays. So I don't think that's wrong to say. There's probably good portions of fans out there that care just as much or more because obviously, like I get it. A lot of these players grew up, pulling for particular teams and all like that. But there are a lot of players that come to certain schools that probably didn't grow up going that they came there for them like to better themselves. You know what I
Right.
mean? But like, there's a lot of individual fans, like ourselves included, like we're just worried about what's best for Alabama or Auburn. Like that's all we just care about their well being. And a lot of times the players, obviously, they're worried about that. They're worried about the program, but they're worried about their own personal well being because they're trying to get to the next level. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's in you know anything professionally, like our own personal jobs. We're worried about getting
Yeah.
ourselves to the next level. Like we care about the companies we work for, but at the end of the day, like we're worried about bettering ourselves. You
Right.
know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with that mentality at all. But
Yeah, they're there 3 or 4
yeah,
years. I've been investing 27 years.
yeah. So I mean that's just part of it. But I think the level of fan support and stuff, that's what makes college football and football in the SEC, collegiate collegiate athletics as a whole. That's what makes it special because you have that level of care, of passion, of people dedicating their time, the resources into it. That's what makes it fun, and that's why there's uh, you know a lot of media coverage on it, and people like us that are coming on here and talking about college football as much as we can because of the level of care we have about it.
Absolutely. You got anything else you want to cover?
Really just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hope they've enjoyed the SEC preview series so far. Be sure to follow us on TikTok. Corden is posting a lot of our clips on there, and we've gotten a lot of good traffic on that so far. A lot of
Yes.
comments, a lot of views. We
Yes.
appreciate that a lot. Uh, please keep doing it. We love to see it. Whether you agree, disagree, you're indifferent. This is talking season for a reason. This is the time of year for everybody to be optimistic. So if you think we're too low on your team, I totally understand. Everybody should be optimistic. That if you don't think you're going to the playoff at this time of year, then you just don't really have a very good football team. So everybody in the top half of the SEC should think, or you can say the top 12 or whatever, 13, however many you want to say. Everybody should feel optimistic at this time and feel like they've got a great chance to go to the playoffs this year and compete at the highest level. So, yeah, we love to hear from you. Same thing on YouTube. Feel free to comment on there, like and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that a lot as well. No pod next week. I'm going to be out on vacation, but so there will be a week coming up where we probably do two, but we're going to lead this all the way up into late August into football season. And so be sure to check us back here soon. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you back next time on Saturdays in the SEC.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. TikTok is at Saturdays.n.the.sec. Saturdays in the SEC with some periods in between each number or word. Appreciate you guys.